Hey everybody, this is Greg Petix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the Petixonian Institute of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to have another double feature, this time featuring Al Colombia. And this is his very earliest work, solo work, from Beyonde. And this is the Petixonian Library Edition that I created. And Doghead, one shot from Tundra Press. So this is right around the time when Al Colombia was finishing up his work, illustrating big numbers for Alan Moore. And after Bill Sienkiewicz left that project, Al Colombia was his assistant for a few years. So he could ape Sienkiewicz's style very well, as we shall see in these two comics. And he took over from Big Numbers. That didn't work out. There's all kinds of crazy stories about how that didn't work out. Spectacularly didn't work out. But who knows what really happened. But he created some work on his own. He just went off and said, well, that chapter of my life is over. So From Beyonde was a black and white comic, 1991, made it to 1992. There was 4 issues. Some of the earliest Al Colombia stuff in print. Really amazing stuff. He's already really good. But then I had these other contributors who weren't very good. So I made my own comic. With my scissors and glue, I just chopped out the Al Colombia stuff. Everything from those 4 issues. And made this nice little thin comic. Cover by Al Colombia. This is from the 2nd issue. We can totally see the Sienkiewicz influence. Photorealistic stuff going on. Excuse me. Al Colombia does this front piece here. Vinda de Sangre. Just very interesting. He's already very abstract. Not abstract, but I don't know, obtuse. His art is very kind of artsy. And his stories are too. One might say a little pretentious at times. He's not the great storyteller he became after the Biologic show. So here we have the meat of this issue. Clara Mutilares, a celebration of violence in 5 pods. And this is completely done by Al Colombia. See the manipulation of photos. Even the art style is very Bill Sienkiewicz. The way these buildings are. It's pretty much, you could think this was Bill Sienkiewicz if somebody didn't tell you. So in this first little pod, we see this couple. And I guess this woman's sick of her husband snoring. And she gets up and she smashes a lamp on his head. That's the end of the little episode. Pod 2, Matuta. We see this woman on a beach with this huge distended stomach. Otherwise, she's quite beautiful. And a guy on the beach looks like he's giving her the stink eye. Maybe he doesn't think she has a bikini body worthy of the beach. So all of a sudden, these tendrils come out from her vagina and yank him in. And you hear chomp, crunch, chew, burp, slurp. So she just ingested this guy through her vagina, and then she burps as she leaves. Really disturbing, creepy, weird shit, as Al Colombia is the master of that. So here we have Pod 3, Bloody Monkeys. And this woman's talking and talking, and her boyfriend or date or husband, they're at a fancy restaurant. He just starts assaulting her. He takes a spoon and shoves it up her left nostril at an awkward angle, and she just keeps talking. He takes her by her hair and pushes her face into her plate, mashing her face. She's still talking. And for some reason, he pours a cup of wine over her head. That's the least of his assaults on her. He sticks the fork in her cheek. She's still talking. And then all of a sudden, he conjures the guts to pop the question. And after all that, he says, Iris, will you marry me? And he's smoking a cigar while he asks her. And she says, marry you when you know cigar smoke makes me want to vomit? Your inconsideration and pomposity is astounding, Quentin. Of course, no. So a little gag there. She didn't mind all the violent assaults on her person, but the cigar smoke is what makes her say no. Pod 4, lament. We see this guy. He's just bashing his head into this railing. And the storekeeper comes out and says, what the hell are you doing? Cut it out. You're causing a disturbance. And he just says, leave me alone. Can't you see I'm trying to figure something out here? He's like, not in front of my shop, you ain't. And then the guy complains enough, or, he bitches enough that the guy says, fine, do whatever the fuck you want, you nut. And he continues to bash his head in. Very weird. Pod 5, the harrowing. Isla de Sufrimiento. So this is just more of a poem. I'm not even sure what's going on. But all this great imagery. Yeah, very strange. Don't quite understand it, but I like the art. Here's a little pinup, La Muñeca. We can see how Colombia's already, he's kind of got iterations of this character in his later work. These horrifying, scary beings. Another little pinup, Levin. Very Sankovic. But, he does Sankovic so well. I love Sankovic, so more Sankovic, great. And here's an untitled piece. This is another one that's pretty much just like a poem. It's not very narrative. Peter Lorre looking guy. Here we can see he's moving away into something else. This doesn't necessarily look like Bill Sankovic. Globo del Ojo. And it's just a bunch of eyes mounted with the person's name on it. Here's a little creditors page. They call it Pain Box. The company that made this cooperative of artists, was Studio Insidio. It's these other guys who weren't very good. That's why I chopped them out and made this one little thin issue. But look at this, man. He's like 20 when this came out. So good already. I guess learning under Bill Sankovic's tutelage will make you good pretty fast. Here's the cover of number 1. I know, not to repeat myself, Bill Sankovic, holy shit. Great stuff. Here's, I believe, was a back cover from Beyonde. From Beyonde is spelled with an E at the end, by the way. You can see it there, but I didn't mention that if you're looking for it. Just a bunch of random disturbing images. Sorry about that. I'm still feeling a little under the weather here. And here's a weird little abstract back cover. It's kind of interesting. That doesn't look like Sankovic. So this doesn't really exist anywhere except at the Petixonian. We made our own comic. But you can get the 4 issues of From Beyond, I'm sure, very cheap. I don't think anyone cared about that comic at all. So now we have a bigger splash in the comics industry. Tundra Press printed this when Tundra was flush with money and was just putting out all kinds of great stuff. This is called Doghead. And they just gave out Colombia some money in a nice format. It's a nice little square bound, full color. Some nice stuff. Now we see that he's incorporating Dave McKeon into his work. So this is A lot of very heavy aping of Dave McKeon's work. It's 3 pods in this. 3 little stories. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess it's not all color, but it could be. It's slick paper. This first story is called Broken Face. And this guy in a weird mask shows up at this woman's house. She says, "I'm glad you're here." And they start making out and they have sex. We look at a painting on the wall and the eyes are cut out so people can look in. And it turns out there's this whole line of people waiting to have a little peep show. And this guy's taking their money, 25 cents for a peek. But then we see the guy fall out the window. Or maybe this is a guy. I'm not even sure if it's the guy with the mask. I don't think it is. It's some other guy. And these guys are at a cafe. And this guy gets coffee in his necktie. He's all pissed. He's a very fussy. He's a fusspot, this guy. And then we go back to the line. People are still peeping at them. The masked guy leaves. And that's it. Just a weird little vignette in this weird, surreal world. This one's called Patio Lanterns, or Her Son's a Plant That Won't Stop Growing. A Day in the Life of Oliver Black. Here we have a lot of Sankovincian stuff on display. But then this is totally, I don't know, that looks like modern art. This could be in the Guggenheim or something. Has a lot of Pixies references. Colombia wore all of his influences on his sleeve, writing and drawing. My father is my mother's son. I am the son of a motherfucker. I am the son of a bitch. And this one's a little more abstract. It has some kind of some structural narrative things, but very poem-like the way it's written. His long-lost sister shows up. Phlox. Porcine, maggot white. This gastropod cradled me in frozen milk arms and took me home. Kind of implies that they have sex. And yeah, I'm not quite sure what's going on in here. Very poetic. Very interesting, though. Now we get a little more narrative. Chapter 1, Tea Picture Show. And there's this married couple. And the wife says, "Stop daydreaming and eat the most important meal of the day." And the husband says, "I wasn't daydreaming. Rather, I was contemplating a lavish suicide." And he's running ideas by her. And she just says, "I wouldn't shoot myself on an empty stomach if I were you." This is very Cage's era, Dave McKeon. And this is pure big numbers era Sankovic. So they're just talking very nonchalantly about ways he can kill himself. And then she's saying, like, "Oh, I could stab you." Like, kind of half jokingly. So eventually she's tired of the conversation. She grabs his breakfast, which he won't eat. It's a monkey brains cooked in the monkey skull. And she says, "I'll feed this to Lucian. Maybe he'll eat it." Just look how Columbia's got it nailed down, man. He's just his hand painted. It's just, man, he's got his craft nailed down. I think he's only 21 at this point. This is a year later, I should have said. This comes out in 92. Man, I want to be Bill Sankovic's apprentice. So then we cut away. We see a guy walking across the street. And I think this is the dude from the cafe earlier who was talking to his buddy. He runs him over. And it looks like he totally kills the guy. But he doesn't care at all. He's just saying, "My car, my car." And everyone who comes out to look at the crash is just worried about his car. Not one person is worried about the guy who's dying in the street. And one mechanic says, "Hey, you could take it to my shop. I'll fix it for $3,000. And this other guy says, It's like, screw that. I could get you a new car off my used car lot for cheaper than that. So they start arguing. And then we cut back to the husband who's looking out his window at this crazy incident. Then we have a little subsection A. And the little interlude with the husband, this weird little monstrous fly comes up to him, holding a head that's talking. And this guy's just sick of hearing him talk. So when the fly flies away, gets the fly swatter, kills it, steps on it, crushes him. And I know this makes a lot of linear sense, but it is interesting to me. So he hears a knock on the door, and it's this vampire. He even announces himself as such. He doesn't lie or anything. And Oliver offers him a cup of tea. And they start talking about, he mentions how he's married. And this vampire starts talking about how basically he's revealing that he's a misogynist. He's just like, oh, women, I got no use for them. What a pain in the ass. I pity you for having a wife. Here we get some beautiful painted black and white artwork in the Sankovic style. So they're having this conversation, and basically the vampire is offering him ways to kill himself. It's almost like he's a salesman. He's like, oh, you could try this for a low fee. I could sell you some electric soap, some big sharp knives, dynamite suppositories. And the guy's turning them all down. He doesn't like the sound of them. But then he's thinking about, a gun. Nice and simple. Guns don't make excuses. So this vampire takes a gun out of his samples case. And they play Russian roulette. Look at this photorealistic art. Pretty amazing. And it won't go off. Even though he put 5 bullets in the 6 chambers, it should have gone off after the first one. And he's like, something must be wrong with this gun. He keeps trying to shoot himself in the head. It's like he's disappointed. So he keeps saying, I get to go again. And then finally it explodes. It goes off, I mean. And there's a knock at the door, and these 2 weird little, I don't know, freaky guys come in, and they grab the corpse away. But then as they're grabbing him out, the vampire appears again, almost as if he's got a second body ready to go. And then he says, sorry about that. I lose my head sometimes. Pretty corny. Just this art is so good. I can't believe this guy's 21. It's insane. Even though he is ripping off 2 other artists, but he's doing it really well. So finally he says, hey, I got this one you might like. It's like this button. And when you want to die, you push it. It's this magic button. I guess that'll kill you. And he's thinking about it. And then he introduces him to his wife. And he has to warn the vampire. She has a habit of knifing strangers, even friends of mine. He basically has to ask his money to borrow. He has to ask his wife to borrow some money. He doesn't have enough money for the button. So he says, hey, hon, can I borrow some money so I can buy this thing? And she's like, I only have a quarter. And the vampire says, that's plenty. That's fine. So he buys it. And at the very end of this vignette, he's about to push it. We don't know what's going to happen. The wife starts to worry before he does. Wait, Oliver, you're not really going to do this, are you? She just thought he was joking, maybe? So here we have epilogue pigeonholed. And I don't know if this is Oliver's point of view, but there's this character in the dark. You're not a surgeon. You're lost. You're dead. You're filthy dead, and you've got no surgical qualifications. And then the unseen person says, how can I become one? Hello? And that's that for that bit. But here's another little subsection. This one's totally just a poem. Seems like he has a good ear for language. It's not a horrible poem. It's not embarrassing. And we do see a different style of art here. I don't know if Al Colombia ever drew like this before or since. It's kind of interesting. Subsection B, the last adaptation. And here we have a little play. Oliver is talking. I guess he's still in the dark here. He's kind of in the afterworld. And he's talking to God. And God says there's no light left. Everyone ran off. Except for the bugs. They've eaten my light. They've taken all the light away. It basically makes it seem like God is just a guy who owned a bar that just was really decadent. He gave everyone everything they wanted. He had great drugs, free whores. But then one of his workers named Lou was a regular. And he always took advantage of the free stuff. And then one day Lou ran off and started his own bar. And that's where everyone goes to now. So God's bar is vacant. And this is the end of that, whatever that was. Lots of little things put together. And here's the last story in the issue, Poster Child. I'm going to try to get this so it won't glare too much so you can see it. This is just beautiful full color, Sienkiewicz style art. We see this legless, armless guy. He's looking at a fly like he's going to eat it, but this rat gets it first. And then he eats the rat. This art is so beautiful. I just like the 9-panel grid too. This looks like Ted McKeever here. Crazy cityscape. And yeah, this is pretty abstract. I'm not quite sure what's going on. But man, look at this panel. Beautiful art. Another Peter Lorre looking guy. And yeah, I'm not really sure, but I fucking love looking at it. At one point, he's laying down on the street. All these people are stepping on his face with their shoes. And it seems like he likes it at first, and then he starts screaming. Look at the colors there. Gorgeous. And at the very end, he tells the reader, I just want to be a machine. So I don't get that at all. And here's a little last page, like an epilogue. We have a little drawing here, painting, and it says, Death to Al Colombia. He does his thank yous, and then he does with apologies to, and all the people he feels like he's ripped off. Black Francis from the Pixies, Nick Cave, William S. Burroughs, Dave McKeon, David Lynch, Papa Kafka, and J.G. Ballard. And one nice little illustration on the back. So that's it. Double feature. Al Colombia double feature. And I hope you enjoyed it. The next thing he did after Doghead was Biologic Show. And that's when Al Colombia becomes a master. I gotta say, his craft in these is outstanding. But the stories, I don't know. It's just kind of, I gotta say, it's kind of pretentious doggerel. It's like, I don't really know. It's kind of interesting to try to decipher that kind of stuff sometimes. But eventually you just want some kind of nugget of, I don't know, communication, linear, interesting story or something. So, yeah, that's it then. Hopefully I'll be feeling a little better and I won't sound so congested next time I do the next video. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time at the Petixonian Institute of Comic Book Studies.